A leader has to take the risks.
So welcome to Wealth on the Beach podcast. My name is Daniel Alonzo, and as always, I'm bringing some of the greatest minds in the world. We're talking health, wealth, business, and success. Today we have the pleasure to hang out with Zeona McIntyre, and she is an Airbnb specialist. She's really all things under the sun real estate. And so today is going to be a really cool conversation talking about her story and how real estate has really affected her life and her success. So Zeona, thank you so much for being here today. And maybe you can kind of get us started by giving us a little taste of your history and your journey. How'd you get started in the real estate world in the beginning?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I got started very accidentally. So I was in massage school thinking that I was going to build out this whole massage business and empire, which is totally different than real estate. And I had a friend who was laid off, and he was living in New York City. And this was back in 2011. And he said, I heard about this Airbnb thing. I'm stuck in this lease on my apartment, and I think I'm just going to rent it out and go travel. He was feeling really burnt out and just thought he needed a new lease on life. And what he didn't expect was that his apartment was going to make so much money. And so after a year in this apartment he didn't own, that he was just subletting out on Airbnb, he had made $50,000. And at that time, $50,000 was like a starting tech salary. Now, maybe that would be closer to $100,000, but this is 10 years ago. To me, it really made me think. I was like, wow, I've never made that much money. And I was 26 at the time, working a little over minimum wage. And he finally got me to this place of saying like, well, what do I've got to lose? Let me try this thing out. And so the way that I was able to try it is that I had a 2-bedroom apartment I was renting, and I had a roommate for a little while, and then she decided to move out. And so I already had her room furnished and thought, let me just throw it on Airbnb. And if it rents, great. And if it doesn't, I'll just go get another roommate. I already have everything. And it turned out to rent so well that I ended up leaving my room as well, and then having to get more apartments. And then I eventually bought apartments, and it's just kind of been an unexpected blessing.
So so basically it all started by basically a mentor. Did he become like a mentor of yours, or did you end up going out and seeking out other mentors, or like how'd that happen?
Yeah, well, it was really accidental. He's just like my best friend from high school. So we're still great friends 20 years later. And he is a lender now, and I'm a real estate agent. So we've kind of followed a similar path, but I wouldn't exactly call him a mentor at the time. It was really just accidental, happy accident. And at that time, there weren't a lot of people talking about it. Airbnb was not a household name, and the social media wasn't the way it is now, where there's so much information out there. And I don't think there were any books on it or anything. So I really was trying things out. It was really throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what stuck. And that's how I got started.
And so do you think that, looking back, what are some of the mistakes that you made that maybe you would change if you were to go back? Any mistakes?
Sure. Yeah. I think at first I was, again, a college student who didn't have much money. And so my place was not that beautiful. And there wasn't a lot of competition at the time. So I don't think it really mattered. But knowing what I know now, I really focus on design, and I really focus on professional photos, because the advertising, the marketing piece is huge. And again, it's competition these days that we didn't have back then. And then I think another thing that I see now is it's incredible how fast you can see people building. And I think it's because they have an example. You're hearing about people getting, 10 units in a couple of months or something like that. And if you hear that and there's a path to it, it makes you believe that you could probably do the same. And I just didn't have an example like that. So I took it really slow. I got about a place a year, and over time that built up to a nice portfolio, but it was not the rocket launch start.
Yeah, you see some of these people and you're like, they're just empires after a couple of years. So Yeah, I get it.
Mhm.
And maybe too, I mean, would you say you're more on the conservative side or you're more of a risk taker? Where are you?
I'm definitely a risk taker, but what changed my pace was the fact that I was really into the FIRE movement. So I'm not sure if your listeners know about that, but that is financial independence, retire early. And so for me, what I was focused on was just getting enough so that I was financially independent and not building an excess. And I think nowadays, and especially in real estate and especially in social media, you see a lot of flash. And so people are wanting to do something really impressive. And I was just trying to have a super cool, chill life. So it's different,
So
different goals.
no, I get it. I get it. I went into business. A lot of my listeners know my story, but in case somebody doesn't know my story, I started in business at 21. I was financially independent by 28. So I had saved $1 million in cash, and I had a business that was paying me a $500,000 a year in passive income. So that was kind of
Yeah.
my goal. My goal, though, Ziana, was kind of like yours in the sense that I just wanted to get free. Like my whole goal
Yeah.
was to be retired by the time I was 30. I wanted to be done and just be safe on my own island. Now I look back and I go, man, I could have made millions and millions of more dollars. But then I kind of went, well, maybe it's okay what I did because I've been free for like 20 years now. So I've had complete
Absolutely.
financial freedom, and so I've traveled the world. I've done all these things. We're going to talk about your story as well, but
Sure.
because that's kind of why you did it, right? I mean, you did it because you
Yes.
wanted to travel the world. I think you've been to like 48 countries or something like that. So
Sure
tell us
have.
about tell us about like what it feels like to be financially free.
Yeah, I think it is a safety that is unparalleled. And it really depends on how someone grows up. But I was raised on very limited income. My family just was not good with money, and they were always kind of struggling. And so I knew that I wanted something different, and to be able to provide that safety for myself was really important. And so I think for anyone, I would recommend just getting to that baseline. It sounds like you were probably financially independent way before you actually called yourself that, because 500 grand a year is a lot more than most people need to live off of, air quotes need. So I think that's the first
I
thing.
don't know how people survive on less than 500. No, I'm playing with you. I'm playing with you.
Well, it depends where you
Keep
live.
going.
You have a
Keep,
very beautiful background there,
keep
so maybe
going.
you're in a very expensive place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, it's just different goals, different strokes for different folks.
Right. And so but that's kind of but I think the bottom line is that you got to have a goal. And I do a coaching program. It's called Wealth on the Beach Club every Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I was coaching this morning, and we're doing our year end goal planning session, and we're going through all the goals, and we're going through all the different areas. And it's interesting because so many people are not clear on what they want. And I think what's
Mhm.
cool about your story is you were very intentional. You were very clear on what it is that you wanted. You knew how much you needed to have. You knew how many properties you needed to have. You knew exactly what you needed to do year by year to get to where you wanted to get to at whatever particular time, specific time you wanted to get there. And so how
Yeah.
important were those goals that I mean, did you write them down? Did you have, like how did you plan for what you did?
Yeah. So I kind of copied other people's goals, which I think can be a good thing. But I had been reading a blog. So this is kind of going back to that idea of if you see someone who's done it, you can find that path for yourself. But I was reading a blog called Mr. Money Mustache, which is all about the financial independence movement. And he retired by 30. And I was 26 when I was reading it. It just so happened that it was a little bit before I got into doing Airbnb. So kind of all happened at the same time. But I thought, well, I have no money. I was in $50,000 of student debt. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But maybe if I just set this goal and try to get to where he is, then I can also do it too. And so it was partially manifesting. and partially seeing that somebody could do it. So it was something I could believe in. But beyond that, I think what really helps, and I try to tell people to do this with their goal setting, is find out what your absolute needs are and figure out what that number is. And then also find out what your wants are. So for an example, maybe you only need $3,000 or $4,000 to live off of, and that covers your mortgage and your food and just basic needs. And then maybe to travel and do a lot of extra things, you want more like 5 or 6. But if you can figure out a way to passively get that $3,000 a month covered, you're in a really good spot, because you don't need to be saving for retirement once you've got that passive income locked in, right? And I think people often set their goal really high, and then it's harder to get there and it takes them longer.
And so you're saying that get to that minimum baseline and say, okay, this is what I need, get to that area. And then once you're there, well, sky's the limit if you want, but really it's just up to whatever you want after that point. And I like how you talked about, because I am in financial planning. I run a financial services company for over 25 years now. And of course, we are in the retirement planning universe, right? We teach people how to, retire and plan for it and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, if you have passive income coming in that never stops, and really, if you're thinking about real estate, somebody always needs somewhere to sleep. I mean, even right now, would you say that even in the market right now, I mean, this is a great time to own apartments, a great time to own property that you can rent out, because it's kind of like even tough right now. I mean, apartments are like 95, almost 100% full vacant. I mean, full occupied right now. Am I correct here? Or?
Yeah, I think people saw in the last 2 years, so like 2020, 2021, inflation exploded, and beyond that, so the house prices went up, but also rent went up really high. And so if you'd already bought something, your mortgage is not going to change that much, but your rent is not something you can control. And so for a lot of people, they're scrambling around now because they didn't plan for that. And so if you are someone who owns property, that tide rises all boats, right? So the inflation thing doesn't hurt us as much, because with that, our property values go up. And then with that, we can actually charge more in rent. So it is an asset that I feel really good about. And even buying in a recession, I think there's always a good time to buy real estate. And I think it's always something that you can depend on. And it really helps build your retirement nest egg.
So you wrote this book called The 30-Day Stay. And so tell us a little bit about the book, but also, like, why should somebody go buy it? Like, let's just say, okay, so for me, all right, I don't own a lot of property. I do own some commercial property and, some single family homes. But the truth is, I'm not a big real estate person. I've made most of my money in investments and stocks and things like that. But for somebody like me that I've been saying for years that I really want to diversify to different areas, and this is definitely something of interest for me. So tell me why I need to read your book.
Well, I'll be the first to say that real estate investing is not for everyone. So if you found something that you love and stocks that works well for you, and you think real estate's going to be a hassle, then maybe it's not for you. But a lot of people are really curious about real estate, and for good reason. I think it's created more millionaires than anything else. So real estate can be a great thing. The reason I think our book is so valuable is that right now, if you go out and try to get a long-term rental, which is just a basic 1-year lease, a vacant place that you're going to rent out long-term, it can not make money. So it can be one of these things where your mortgage is just high enough that it doesn't even cover it with the tenant's rent. So that is a little problem that ends up happening sometimes, is that with house prices being too high, with interest rates being so high, which they currently are, it can be hard to make the numbers work. And so unless you're okay with just breaking even or maybe losing a little bit of money every month, which I never recommend, you kind of need another strategy. And so our strategy is 30 days or more. So it's furnished rentals month to month. It's also called midterm rentals. And it's similar to short-term rentals, but it's actually less turnover and it's allowed everywhere. And so the problem with short-term rentals is that all these areas have started to outlaw it, right? You guys have probably been hearing about that in the news. And so it's difficult to find a place where you can do it legally. And so this is a beautiful little gray area where you can make as much or maybe a little bit less than short-term rentals, but generally as much, but it's less work and it's legal. So that's why we thought it was an important thing to teach about.
So, what are some of the principles then? I mean, what are some things that we need to know if we, because I'm very interested. So, I mean, because I want to diversify, I'm very interested in knowing and understanding this kind of stuff. And so, what are some of the things, like what type of properties are best for this? Is it a single family home? Is it an apartment building? Is it a duplex? What's the best place that I should look at first?
Yeah. So this is a hard question to answer because all asset classes work and it depends on how you're marketing it and who you're trying to market to. So the low-hanging fruit is Airbnb and Furnish Finder. Furnish Finder is a website that markets mostly to travel nurses. And so those types of that type of marketing and those types of clients like the 1 and 2 bedrooms. So that could work really well if you have small multifamily, even if you own apartment buildings, they can work well if you just have a condo. All those things can work great. But there's another type of midterm rental client, and that's insurance claims. So somebody has a fire in their home or a flood or something, and they need to be out of their house while it's getting renovated. Those insurance claims pay more than short-term rentals. They can pay 2 to 3 times market rate, which is incredible. And those people generally want a bigger house. And so you're going to do better with those if you've got a larger home, like a 4-bedroom plus. And so it really just depends. If you're a long-term rental landlord already and you want to convert some of your properties, it's just a matter of, what is the inventory you have, and then using that inventory, marketing to the right client.
And so a lot of people say that there's going to be a correction in the market. It's going to be devastating this year. 2023 is going to wipe everybody out. And, there's a storm that's coming. And so what do you think?
I think people are trying to sell papers. Okay. You're right. They're trying to get clicks. Okay. But I don't know if it'll be all that. I definitely think the market stood to have a correction. We needed it. That's part of the cycle. It's natural. And so while you're in a recession, this is another reason why I like the midterm space versus the short-term rental space. And the reason is a short-term rental, people are traveling for vacation. And in a recession, less people vacation. They just maybe don't have the disposable income. They feel scared. I'm not sure. But with midterm stays, you're generally marketing to someone who has a need or they're traveling for business. So if they're traveling nurse, they're traveling for a job. So they're going to go do that. If they're an insurance client, they don't have anywhere else to go. They've got to go do that. So that's going to happen whether you're in a recession or not.
And so you don't think that we're going to have a crazy blowout recession that's going to, take a lot of people down this year?
I don't think so. And none of us have a crystal ball. So I think all the people that are predicting, they don't know either. Right. But I do think we're going to have a little correction. I think even short-term rentals, if people are loving that strategy, they're not going to go away, but they might just be stagnant for a couple of years. So I think real estate's still important.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going anywhere. I mean, for sure. I mean, obviously with interest rates being so high. So, because, this kind of makes it a little bit tricky. Maybe you can explain this to me, sure. Because, right now you could buy a 1,500 square foot condo for like $1 million. You know what I mean? So, I mean, especially when you're talking California. I live in California. So, I mean, down the road, it's $1 million, right? I mean, how do you, there's no way you're going to get somebody to pay the kind of rent to take a $1 million mortgage. I don't know. I mean, you tell me. I mean, are people paying that much money in rent today to be able to afford something like that?
In some places they have to, right?
Yeah.
But I generally recommend that if you're in an expensive market and you're just getting your feet wet, that maybe that's not the best place to invest. And there's other places. So I send a lot of people to the Midwest to do this kind of investing, especially when they're just getting started. But do whatever you feel the most comfortable with. It's just that numbers work differently in different markets. And usually you can find a market where the ratio is a lot better. And it just gives you a little more safety in your deal.
And so you have properties in lots of different states because I think you have, I don't know how many double digit portfolio now. So like
Yeah.
how many properties do you have and are they in a lot of different states?
Yes. So now knowing what I know, I would buy more in a collected area because what is great in this midterm space is that you get to be known as somebody who has properties and that helps place people when they need that. And so if you've got 5 properties in one town, it's a lot better than having them spread out in different states. So I currently own in 4 states and I have 12 units that I'm renting out. And then my partner has another 5 units and they're in their own different states. So I would say we're diversified. But now that I'm really focusing on this strategy, I'm selling off some places and being more strategic about where I'm buying.
And because that becomes a little bit, I don't know, you tell me. I mean, does that become a little bit hard as far as like time management? And I mean, how often do you see these properties? How often do you inspect them? How often do you actually physically touch them?
Yeah, not that often. And that's the cool thing is that we're in such a digital world now that you just don't need to physically be there. There's not much that you'd have to do on the ground. So I generally go out to meet my properties, what I call it, right when I'm closing. And then I'm involved in the furnishing because I enjoy that part. And it gives me an excuse to go out and see the property. But after that, I generally don't check on them. I don't really need to. We've got cleaners that are on the ground that will let us know when things need to change. We've got a handyman on the ground, but you don't need a large team either to run an operation like this.
And as far as like finances go, I mean, is there kind of a ratio that you use? I mean, if I mean, is there percentages that you use? I mean, a percentage for the rent, percentage for the upkeep of the property, and things like that. Are there numbers?
Yeah, so generally when I'm looking to buy a property like this, I generally want to see a 15% cash on cash return. So what that means is all the money that I'm spending upfront to purchase the property, which could be furnishing, it could be renovating if you decide to do that. And then your down payment, your closing costs, all of that versus what I can make every year. So that's the ratio I want to see. But if you get into insurance contracts, you can make well above that. So it's good to know that there's just some upside, but I like to run my numbers very conservatively to start. So to give you an example, I have a friend in Atlanta in a market that I'm thinking about moving into. He's got a home where his mortgage is $2,400 a month, and he's currently got some clients in there on an insurance contract at $8,000 a month. So, and they're there for 5 months. So that's pretty incredible that you can work something out like that. That's unheard of cash flow.
Yeah, I mean that's great, great cash flow. I mean, but now, I mean, with that said, I mean, once that 5 months is up, how often are these properties sitting vacant?
So you need to utilize different strategies to fill them, right? So if you're looking for more insurance contracts and it doesn't come up right away, he usually, or I would also do this, is buy it in an area where I can still short-term rent. And so I can fill in some gaps if I end up having them. But otherwise, you can get tenants like from Furnish Finder, like I mentioned before, that are medical tenants, and they are looking for places very, very often. So I think I'm sitting around a 2% vacancy rate on my properties. So it's really low.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. I love it. I love it. And hey, look, you've been all over the world, and I mean, 48 countries. I mean, that's quite. I mean, do you have a favorite? Where I mean,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's
what's
been a
some of the cool
long time.
experiences that you've had? What's some of the cool experiences?
Yeah. So it's been a long time since I've been to this particular country. So, maybe it's different these days. But South Africa was something that really struck me. I spent some time in Cape Town, and then outside of Cape Town, they have gorgeous wine country. And so it's just such a different place than what we have in the US. You've got such a different mix of cultures there. Languages, they have like 13 national languages. There's a lot of jazz and really interesting music, and it's by the sea. There's surf. It's a really beautiful place. So that's one of my favorites, but I need to get back there and double check that I still love it.
Yeah, well, I think it's I went on safari, and it was kind of nice going to South Africa with a buddy that was born in South Africa. So
That's the
a
way.
lot of friends, stayed in a relative's home and kind of got to see how real South Africans live. And right in Johannesburg, originally we went to Johannesburg, and a little bit scary place to be. I mean, lots of electric fences and big walls and gates, and the carjacking capital of the world. So it was a little
Not
bit
my
of a scary
favorite.
place. Yeah, not
Yeah.
probably not most people's favorite, but it's interesting though. I asked him, I said, why do like, how could you live there? I mean, it's like 1 in 200 people are going to get carjacked every day, or some crazy figure like that. And I said, how do people? And he said, what he was telling me is, he said that it was the adrenaline that people get just day to day. They almost get addicted to that adrenaline. Like, you don't know when you're going to almost get killed. So you're almost excited to get up in the morning to go out there to see if you're not going to, I don't know, weird stuff. But and another fact about Johannesburg is that a lot of these homes, they have a gate inside the house. So, and the reason why is because they will follow you through your main big, giant gate in front of your house. They'll follow you in. The criminals, they'll follow you in, and so you have one more chance. If you can get in your house, get in that other locked gate in your house, you have one more chance to get away from getting robbed or killed or whatever. So anyways, just a fun fact about Johannesburg. So,
Wow.
I'm sure you can't wait to get back to South Africa. But no, really, I mean, safari experience. Did you go on safari though? Did you do safari?
We did a small one. We did an ATV safari, which is pretty fun. So you can do some on horseback and ATV. So there's different things, but I think the true ones where you're out for like 4 or 5 days and sleeping in tents, that is really amazing. So I would like to do that at some point. Yeah.
All right. And your next goals. I mean, what do you see? I mean, do you see having a portfolio of hundreds of doors, or what do you see as far as your future goes?
No, I actually like having a small but really high producing portfolio. And so when we wrote our book, so I wrote it with Sarah Weaver, there's a co-author on the book. But when we wrote the book, what we knew at the time was basically this very simple model of using Airbnb and Furnish Finder to get your units filled. I'm now learning so much about this contract space, which is a lot more cash flow, a lot more upside. And so I'm changing my portfolio into having larger homes. And so I'm really dedicating this next year to learn as much as I can and to just kind of like have a beginner's mind about it. I've been in real estate over 10 years. And I think people get stuck in this space of being like, I'm an expert, I can't learn anything more. But there's so much out there, and there's people trying all kinds of really interesting things. So I'm just trying to get out there and suck it up like a sponge.
And that's one of the greatest things that you could teach anybody is to keep learning and to keep growing. And that's why, Zeona, all of us are gonna go out and buy your book today. And we're gonna get in touch with you. You're on Instagram and Twitter and all the different platforms. And so we're gonna get in touch with you, our audience today. Y'all promised me, okay? Y'all promised me you go check her out. And they are going to reach out and they're going to say, hey, we heard you or we saw you on Wealth on the Beach podcast. And they're going to say hello to you, and they're going to ask you questions, and they're going to want to get your book, and they're going to want to know more stuff about you. And so you don't have a problem answering questions, do you?
Sure don't. Yeah.
You don't have a
welcome
problem
that.
making new friends, right? You like making new friends? You cool with that?
Yes. I mean, the goal of putting out a book like this is to help as many people as we can, right? So you get that information out there so everybody can grow together.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate your time and expertise. And with that said, I want everybody to remember that we also have another very important book for you all to get, and it's called Wealth on the Beach. And make sure you get that on Amazon today. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let everybody know, share our videos, let everybody know about Zeona, and share our videos, and let everybody, kind of get some insight that maybe we can bring some value to their life. And we appreciate all of you guys joining us every single month, every single week, and taking that knowledge so that you can grow your life to that next level. As always, dream bigger than ever. Make sure you get after it, but most importantly, do it now. God bless you. We'll see you at the top.